Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're strapping into our rockets and blasting off to, the whole colonizing the moon
Wow,
thing.
it's a big one, isn't it?
Huge EE. And you guys sent in a ton of articles and research on it. Clearly, you're all fascinated by this idea.
Yeah, with good reason. It really does make you wonder, what if we could? But then at the same time, you have to think, hold on, how do we even begin?
Exactly. So much to unpack with this one, so let's get into it. Okay, so before we go any further, let's address the, how do they say, the elephant in the room? Or I guess in this case, the elephant in the lunar rover. Why even consider setting up shop on the moon?
Well, for starters, some of the reasons are honestly just flat out cool.
Okay, I like where this is going.
I mean, imagine research labs on the moon,
Okay.
telescopes with a view that would make Hubble look like it's peering through a foggy window.
Whoa, okay. A crystal clear view of the universe. I'm listening. What else?
So we've got the cool factor covered.
Check.
But it's not all just fun and games. This stuff gets real. We're talking lunar mining.
Okay, now that feels very sci-fi gold rush. Am I right?
Right, but it's not as simple as like planting a flag and yelling, mine. It's about what the moon has that we're running out of here on Earth.
So what are we talking?
I'm talking helium-3.
Helium what now?
Helium-3, it's this isotope of helium that has the potential to be like this insanely powerful, clean energy source.
Hold on, so you're telling me that mining on the moon could be what powers our smartphones in the future? That's wild.
It's a possibility. And then there are rare earth elements.
Elements.
Yeah, the things that are smartphones, computers, all of our tech can't exist without. And mining those on the moon instead of here on Earth, that could be huge for certain industries, potentially even help with the environmental impact of all the mining we do here.
Okay. I'm seeing the appeal here. We're talking rare resources, potential new energy sources. It's a lot, but I can already tell this is about more than just scientific curiosity.
Oh, absolutely. One of the articles you sent mentioned the strategic advantage of having a lunar base. It'd be like the ultimate stepping stone. Think about it, a launch pad for missions further into the solar system.
To Mars.
Mars and beyond.
So not just learning about space, but actually expanding humanity's reach further into it.
Exactly.
I've got to admit, that's pretty inspiring stuff. But I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the other side of this whole thing. My research notes are practically overflowing with concerns and challenges when it comes to actually making this lunar dream a reality.
Yeah, well, it's important to be realistic about these things. All those incredible possibilities we just talked about, they come with a hefty price tag.
How hefty are we talking?
We're talking billions upon billions of dollars, even with all the advancements in reusable rocket technology.
Yeah, space travel has never been known for being budget-friendly.
To put it in perspective, the International Space Station cost over $150 billion over its lifespan, and that's just low Earth orbit.
Wow. Okay, so money's a problem, but what about the human cost? I mean, this isn't just a quick trip. We're talking about people actually living on the moon long term.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest challenges we face. We've learned a lot from astronauts on the International Space Station, but the moon's gravity is even weaker than the microgravity they experience on the ISS.
And that's a problem because...
Think about the long-term effects on the human body. We're talking muscle and bone loss. And that's just for starters.
And then there's the whole well-breathing thing. We kind of take air for granted down here, but the moon has practically no atmosphere to speak of. How do you even begin to tackle that?
It's not as simple as packing a few extra oxygen tanks, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So what do we do?
Right now, we'd be totally reliant on systems that create breathable air, inside a lunar habitat, that kind of thing.
Make sense? Sealed environments, air filtration, all very space station.
Exactly. But some of the research you sent over is looking at something completely different.
Oh, let's hear it.
Extracting oxygen from lunar soil.
Wait, hold on. We can get oxygen from moon rocks.
It sounds crazy,
Yeah.
right? But that's the goal.
How does that even work?
So the moon's surface, it's basically this mix of oxides, right? And scientists are exploring ways to basically pull that oxygen out.
Mind-blowing, but also kind of brilliant.
It's still early days, but if it works, imagine the possibilities.
Instead of hauling everything from Earth, we learn to live off the land.
Sort of, right.
Okay, I like it. But even if we crack the code on air, what about everything else? I mean, food, water, shelter from, well, not really elements, I guess. More like the lack of...
This is where it gets really tricky, because we're not just talking about life support. We're talking about engineering a completely closed-loop life support system on the moon.
Closed loop, meaning...
Meaning practically everything has to be used and reused. Think of it like a giant terrarium. But instead of plants, it has to support human life.
Wow. Okay, so it's like Earth, but on a much MUCH
Yeah.
smaller and way more fragile scale.
Yeah.
And a whole lot more challenging to maintain. We're talking about recycling water down to the last drop, cultivating food in what's basically a giant vacuum.
Okay, yeah, that's a whole other level of gardening.
Yeah.
What about radiation? I mean, Earth has a magnetic field that kind of protects us, right?
Right? And the moon. Not so much.
Oh.
Yeah, so we're talking about designing habitats that can shield against constant bombardment from space radiation.
Which I'm guessing isn't exactly easy
Yeah.
or cheap.
And not even close. But it's not just the physical challenges we have to think about.
There's more. What did I miss in my research?
Think about the psychological toll this would take.
Oh, right. Living in what's essentially a sealed box.
Yeah.
Millions of miles from home.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking about a completely alien environment, confined spaces, limited social interaction. One of the articles you sent mentioned an astronaut who was on the ISS, right?
Yeah.
He said that even though he was hundreds of miles above Earth, he always felt this connection to it. Like he could look out and see it. It was right there.
But the moon's different.
The moon is this constant reminder that you are utterly isolated. The mental fortitude that would take. It really makes you wonder how being in that environment long-term would affect people.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It really does make you appreciate the things we take for granted down here.
Yeah.
The feeling of the sun, the wind, the vastness of the sky.
It makes you think about how human psychology, our very understanding of ourselves, might change if we were to really live on the moon long-term.
It's kind of a mind-blowing concept. But it also makes me think about something else, something we haven't really touched on yet.
Which is,
The whole legal side of things. Because it's not just about getting there, it's about what happens once we do.
who governs the moon? Who has the right to its resources?
Exactly. I mean, it's like completely uncharted territory.
Well, not completely. You sent over some stuff about the Outer Space Treaty of 1967.
Right. It's a start.
It's a good starting point. It basically says that space is for everyone, that no one nation can claim ownership of celestial bodies.
But-
It's really vague on the specifics, like building permanent bases, mining for resources, that kind of thing.
So while it prevents a giant space land grab, it doesn't really offer a roadmap for how we coexist peacefully on another planet.
Exactly. And as more players enter the space race, we're talking private companies even, these questions get even more complicated. If we're serious about this whole lunar base idea, it can't just be about rockets and robots.
It's bigger than that.
We need to figure out how to govern and manage a whole new world. And we need to do it together.
Internationally.
Exactly. It's a massive undertaking. Which actually reminds me of something else you mentioned in your research, NASA's Artemis program. Yeah, that's the one. Artemis. It's a pretty evocative name when you think about it.
It is. I mean, didn't Artemis, like, rule the moon in Greek mythology or something?
She did. Goddess of the hunt, wilderness, and the moon. Pretty fitting name for a program that's aiming to not just visit, but actually set up shop there long term.
So less one giant leap for mankind and more like laying down the welcome mat for a whole lunar future. And bitches doesn't even begin to cover it.
It really doesn't, but that's what's so exciting about it. It feels like all these threads we've been talking about, the science, the economics, even the ethical stuff, it's all kind of woven together in this Artemis program. Like it's a testing ground, not just for technology, but for how we approach this whole thing, this whole becoming a multi-world species thing.
It's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Because if we can figure this out, how to live sustainably and ethically on the moon, that's like a blueprint for everything else, right?
Yeah.
Future colonization efforts,
Yeah.
maybe even beyond our own solar system someday.
It really makes you think about the big picture, doesn't it? Because it's not just about, escaping Earth. It's about what's possible, pushing those boundaries of human ingenuity. And who knows, maybe figuring out how to grow food on the moon or design a habitat that can withstand space radiation. Maybe that helps us solve problems back here on Earth, too.
Whoa, it's like this loop, right? The moon throws us a challenge we have to innovate to overcome it, and then those solutions end up benefiting everyone, on and off Earth.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole field so captivating. It's not just about what's up there, but what it forces us to confront down here, how we treat each other, how we respect our environment, how we even define home.
It's true. When I first started going through all the research you guys sent over,
Yeah.
I was excited, sure, but it felt very, theoretical.
Yeah.
But now, it feels very human.
Definitely.
The challenges are enormous, the costs are mind-boggling, but the potential payoffs for both humanity and for our planet, Huge.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? That drive to explore, to see what's out there, while still grappling with what it means to be human, with
Hmm.
all our limitations.
It really is. And it all boils down to one question, doesn't it?
Mm.
If we do that, if we actually pull it off, what will that lunar society look like? Will it be this utopia of scientific advancement? Or will it just end up being a repeat of all the same problems we have down here?
It's the question, isn't it? And I don't think it's one we can answer just by looking at the stars. I think it requires looking inward at who we are as a species, our values, our ingenuity, and how committed we are to creating a future worthy of this whole amazing cosmos we're so determined to explore.
What a thought. Definitely a lot to ponder. Well, I think it's safe to say this deep dive has given us all a tea to think about. Until next time, Space Explorers.